Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Whew. All right. Peter Pepper picked a pickle pepper. There are a few occasions when one can make themselves queso and not feel terrible about it. The Super Bowl is one such occasion. Also, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Christmas. I guess really any kind of big gathering day, essentially. Or anytime you can find yourself in the good graces of a Tex-Mex restaurant near you, which, being in Oregon, isn't really so much a thing as far as I can tell. Even in Portland, which tends to have a lot of great food, somehow someone just hasn't done Tex-Mex yet here. So I guess it's not really actually a few occasions. Whatever. For the uninitiated, queso is a Tex-Mex staple. It's basically just a melted cheese dip. And there's basically two ways it gets created. One, using processed cheese, basically American cheese, or a bechamel. And essentially there's only one correct way that it does get made, which is through processed cheese. It is the only way you can get that delicious, velvety texture that great quesos are known for. In essence, the processed cheese you're going to want to get for this is called Easy Melt, but it is extremely hard to get. I can't get it. I could, however, you basically need to order about like $200 worth. It's like 10 or 20 or 30 pounds, something like that. It's a large amount, and it will essentially go bad far before you can consume it, unless you run a restaurant, which is who it's really intended for. The closest standing you can get is going to be Velveeta or Velveeta Blanco. I can't find Velveeta Blanco near me, so I just tend to go and buy Velveeta, or I think Lucerne makes a version of it, and as well, you could also literally take American cheese slices and do this. However, I would not recommend Trader Joe's American cheese slices, which I have no idea why, but they just don't seem to operate the same way that like a Kraft single or even like the Lucerne version of a American cheese slice works. Can I back up the claim that processed cheese makes a better queso other than through my taste buds? No, I cannot. So let's go ahead and back it up through your taste buds. Side note, the other reason I'm posting this video now is because the Super Bowl is coming up in about a week, and this is one of the easiest things you can bring to a potluck or wherever it might be that will feed a lot of people for very little work. All you really have to do is have a crock pot to keep this warm throughout the game, and you're set. All of this is to say that you can essentially make this dish in under 10 minutes. And ideally you're eating it with somebody else. So, first, the recipe. Alright, this one isn't going to be too complicated. The first thing you're going to want to do is set up a bain-marie on the stovetop, which is essentially just taking a pot, putting in a few inches of water, and putting a metal bowl on top that you're going to be heating essentially more indirectly than you would otherwise. The one thing you don't want to do is have the water touching the bottom of the metal bowl. That's basically it, otherwise you're good to go, and just make sure you don't run out of water as it steams off while you do this. However, I feel like this takes so little time that you're not going to run into that problem. So I'm going to provide the quantities for this recipe in two forms. One for a 2-pound loaf of Velveeta, and the other one's going to be for the Velveeta like 5-piece loaves that they do now that are, individually wrapped, so you don't have to use it all at once. However, I kind of feel like it's a complete ripoff because you get 1.25 pounds of Velveeta for like $8 or 2 pounds for $8. So it's a bit of a ripoff, but essentially if you want to stay good for longer, you would go this route. I'm honestly only doing it so I can make this video because I need the whole 2-pound loaf for the party I'm going to. So go ahead and look in the description for the recipes to follow. Essentially, you're just dumping all the shit into one pot and you're done. You just let it melt. That's pretty much the whole process. So here I'm cutting up the Velveeta, throwing it into the double boiler, bain-marie, and then while that starts to melt, I'm going to take a smaller pot and I'm going to fill that with the heavy cream and buttermilk just to warm it through. You really don't want it to boil or anything like that. The whole point of this is essentially so that when you pour this into the cheese mixture, it doesn't suddenly cause it to get cold again and take forever to mix together. That's the one thing that can make this recipe take way too long. So you'll just want to warm the buttermilk and heavy cream mixture through and then pour it onto your processed cheese in the double boiler and then start stirring that together so it starts to melt. From the start, you can already go ahead and add in about 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons, I'm not really sure how much this is, of Monterey Jack cheese and start whisking that in. Go ahead and add in a pinch of garlic powder and some chopped up pickled jalapeños. I mean, come on, it's really not that spicy. But, at the end of the day, it's your queso, I don't have to eat it, so do whatever the hell you want. That's pretty much it. I mean, this shit is basically good to go at that point. I mean, I would go ahead and taste it with a chip, see if it's where you like it. Personally, like I'm doing here, I'm gonna add in a little bit of cayenne. Personally, I like mine a little tangier, so I'm adding in a little bit of that pickled jalapeno juice. If you do that, just be a little careful based on the amount of cheese you have and the amount of juice, because it can cause it to get grainy if you do a little too much. So just like really use it sparingly. The other thing you can do if you want a little more tang is add a little bit more buttermilk. That will also, though, thin it out a little bit, but so is the pickled jalapeno juice, so I guess who cares. And then finally, a great addition into your queso is some diced white onions. So just go ahead and add maybe, a tablespoon or two mixed in there. So when you serve your queso, I'd also recommend creating a quick pico de gallo. So basically taking some Roma tomatoes, some white onion, lime juice, and you can also throw some serrano peppers in there, and basically just dice all those up, mix them together, and you can just plop it right on top for your serving. I wouldn't recommend doing it if you're going to be storing the queso later, because I have found that it could just get kind of weird. It's not bad, but it just the consistency of the queso just gets a little funny. Now, since I'm creating this little mini batch about a week before when I'm actually intending to create a full batch of queso, I don't particularly like the idea of eating queso 2 weekends in a row. It seems really unhealthy. So I decided to make nachos with it. That's a whole different meal. Totally not unhealthy at all. And it's delicious. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at it. It's just chips piled high with melted cheese, more diced pickled jalapenos, and then we're adding even more white onions into it, chopped up cilantro. And for me, I'm a sour cream man, so just a shit ton of sour cream on the side there. And for me, that's actually probably less than I would really like. But it looks about right. I wish it was a little stiffer, a little more firm for the picture and the video, but what are you gonna do? It still tastes great. And that's basically it. Go ahead and find yourself the thinnest, crispiest tortilla chips and get to dipping. I wish there were actually good thin ones here in Oregon, but there's not the kind that I recognize from Tex-Mex restaurants growing up. But I would say probably the best chips you can find in Oregon and Washington from the store is going to be Juanitas. However, you can always make them yourself if you really want to. Extremely easy. It's just that it's a complete pain in the ass to clean up, and your house is going to smell like oil for a couple days. See, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much it. It's not a health food. You're not going to feel good after it. If you're lactose intolerant, I can tell you to definitely take some Lactaid before this, but also it's worth it. And yeah, how long does queso stay in the fridge? I would guess longer than you think it should. There are so many ingredients in that processed cheese that I would wager to guess that it would last for a couple weeks, but do not quote me. Do not let it wait 2 weeks in there. If you get sick, it is not my fault. And yeah, you really should just be eating it faster anyway. I mean, what are you doing? Come on. And yeah, for me personally, queso absolutely makes the shortlist for being a part of my last meals. And yes, I said meals plural. I am not going out with one meal unless I don't know I'm going out.